Kalalam Malak Yahweh, Wa Yahushai Bahashem, Raha Kwadash. Double honors to the elders of GMS Ruel, blessings out to those men, and blessings and salutations to the Akim out there in truth, pushing this word in all sincerity. With that being said, Shalom Israel, Barakatah. Today's lesson comes from RT.com, February 2nd, 2024. And its main heading reads, Zelensky's top aide admits counteroffensive failed. So they are admitting it. When all this time they were saying, we're winning, doing this and that. That's why you can't believe the American media. Because as you can clearly see here, it says admits that the counteroffensive have failed. Further reading, it says Ukrainian leaders have a negative aftertaste from the botched military strategy. Mikhail Podolyak has said, if I pronounce that correctly. Further reading, it says Ukraine's much hyped summer counteroffensive ended in disappointment. That's right, it was much hyped. Mikhail Podolyak, a senior advisor to President Zelensky, has admitted. He also lamented that Kiev continues to suffer from an ammunition shortage. Kiev launched a large-scale push to breach Russian lines in early June after being reinforced by hundreds of Western-supplied tanks and other hardware, but failed to gain any substantial ground. Ukraine suffered colossal losses, and there's the key word, colossal, according to Moscow, with Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu estimating them at around 160,000 since the start of the push. That's why today's lesson is called The Counteroffensive Has Failed. We knew that they were lying in the things that they were saying in their media. Now, a counteroffensive, according to the online Britannica dictionary definition online, means an attack made in order to defend against an enemy or opponent. An example given here is they launched a counteroffensive against the enemy, as you can see here. Right, as in the failed case of that Ukrainian counteroffensive against the Russians. Even though sanctions placed upon the Russians have drastically failed, the Russians are not going anywhere until they fulfill biblical prophecy and return to that old Soviet Union mentality to come up against the West with their deadly bows. They have prophecy to yet fulfill. They're not going anywhere. With that being said, let's go over to Isaiah 13 and 17. Isaiah chapter 13 and verse 17. Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. Those modern day Medes are the Russians that shall not care for silver and gold. They shall not delight in those things. The Russians will not delight in any form of monetary compensation, any type of monetary system, and neither will they care about any official bans of embargo or further sanctions being placed upon them. The Russians and their allies are further being stirred up to come up against Babylon the Great, which is America, with their bows in that greater war to come. And now this thing happening with Iran. If anybody goes and attacks Iran, Russia steps in. And the Most High is a man of war. He's controlling all the steps of war. And if you think that you can win against the Most High, think again. The Lord is the number one strategist when it comes to war. He is a man of war. Exodus 15:3. That's the reason why the Russians are not going anywhere, because they have major prophecy to fulfill. And that official ban of embargo and sanctions placed upon the Russians during the war with Ukraine failed. And Russia is now even stronger. And when it comes to this prolonged war of Ukraine, no one wants to admit that the Russians have won the war of brother versus brother. The only reason why the war continues is in hopes to weaken the Russian Federation, to weaken the Russian juggernaut force. The Russian juggernauts have decimated Ukraine. And I like to use that word juggernaut because a juggernaut is defined as a massive, inexorable force, campaign, movement, or object that crushes whatever is in its path. And that is exactly what the Russians have done with Ukraine. They have decimated that land and continue to do so. And remember that the Russians haven't even mobilized its vast air power against Ukraine. Let me say that again. Remember that Russia hasn't mobilized its vast air power against Ukraine. The so-called American people have lost all confidence when it comes to the American media. And we know that they lie when it comes to the numbers and of the status of the war in Ukraine. That's why this RT article says the counteroffensive has failed. The people are fed up with the lies of the Western media and are now going to outside news networks and other outside sources in order to get the truth. Let's continue with Isaiah 13:18. Isaiah 13:18. Their bows also shall dash the young men to pieces, and they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eyes shall not spare children. The bows speak of their silos, and those arrows speak of those missiles that the bow shall let loose. These arrows are the weapons of the Lord's indignation, his righteous anger. Those arrows of destruction shall not even spare the fruit of the womb upon detonation. In the aftermath, there shall be nothing left. Babylon the Great shall become desolate and a complete wasteland. The scriptures bear testimony of this. And after that smoke clears, that's when the wild birds shall possess the land to stretch themselves upon that line of confusion. They shall stretch themselves upon the borderlines. The time will come when Babylon the Great shall undergo through the worst tribulation of all. The Lord, Yahweh Yahushai, will lay that land desolate and destroy the sinners thereof. The detonation shall bring about radiation and darken everything due to the smoke rising and the ashes falling upon all things. Jeremiah 51:11. Make bright the arrows, gather the shields. The Lord hath raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes, for his device is against Babylon to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of the Lord, the vengeance of his temple. And the kings of the Medes represents the Russians. For his device is against Babylon, which is America. And those devices speak of those inbound nuclear warheads that will be launched from their respective silos of land, sea, and air from their airplanes. That's right, because the airplanes are in the air. Jeremiah 51:28. Prepare against her the nations with the kings of the Medes, the captains thereof, and all the rulers thereof, and all the land of his dominion. Right, according to the scripture of Jeremiah 50 and verse 9, the Lord, Yahweh, Yahushai, will cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country, and Russia itself is in the far north. On that day, the nations and the stirred up kings of the Medes, which are the Russians, the captains and the rulers thereof, shall come up against Babylon the Great to destroy it. They will not regard silver or gold, and their only purpose shall be to burn her with fire. This is all prophecy. And this is why the Russians are not going anywhere. That Russian bear has prophecy to fulfill. Jeremiah 51 and 29. And the land shall tremble in sorrow, for every purpose of the Lord shall be performed against Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without an inhabitant. And there you have it. So no defense capability, no iron dome being placed over Babylon the Great shall help, and no bunker shall stand. Why? Because it says to make the land of Babylon a desolation without an inhabitant. And there you have it. That's why they make bunkers in other countries. Now, the purpose of the Russians is to come up against the West in an all-out war. Russia will strengthen their ties with the other nations in order to come up against modern-day Babylon the Great. The scriptures have said that they shall be a guard unto them. And all the chess pieces are set on the board. The only thing left for modern-day Babylon to do is to implement the MOTB, CHIP of Revelation 13 and 16. And once that CHIP is fully implemented, then Babylon shall become desolate without an inhabitant. But with that being said, Ka'ala Malak Yahweh, Wa Yahushai, Bahashem, Rahakwadash, and double honors to the elders of GMS Ruwell, blessings unto those men, and blessings and salutations to the Akim out there in truth, pushing his word in all sincerity. With that being said, Shalom Israel, Brakda.